Maija Kimes has been a teacher for 32 years, a kindergarten teacher in the Toronto District School Board. Toronto District School Board is back to class as of this week, but Maija Kimes is not back in class, and she has quite a story to tell. Maija is our guest from Toronto. Thank you so much, Maija, for being on our program. We're very happy to meet you today.
Thank you, Heather, for having me on.
What would you normally have been doing this week, Maija?
Well, normally I would have been preparing since the spring for the upcoming school year, which I had started doing already in May while I was doing remote learning for my students. And already in May, I was purchasing clear buttons so that all the students would be wearing a button with their face on it. I would be wearing a button to make it a little bit more familial. And in terms of being able to see expressions, I was buying pylons for physical distancing, hula hoops, colorful duct tape, Ziploc containers for every student to separate their containers. And I was also going to be mentally preparing, which I had begun to do. However, in late June, the last week of June, I made the decision to resign from teaching and retire early.
How old are you, Maija?
I'm 54.
So you weren't planning to retire at this point in your life?
No. I made the decision because I have immunocompromised family members. My elderly parents were my first and foremost consideration. And I felt I had no other choice based on the discombobulated approach that was being put forward by the government.
Really? Tell me more about that. There weren't sufficient protections for you going back to work that you thought you could do so, teach kindergarten safely?
In June, there was a lot of discussion about rolling out a provincial math curriculum in the province where I live, which is Ontario. And I was thinking to myself, what's the game plan? Professional sports teams have a game plan going into the season. What's our game plan for the 2020-2021 school season with the pandemic? I needed a map, I needed clear coordinates, and I didn't feel that was being provided, and I felt it was going to be a game of survivor. And I was very fearful of contracting coronavirus and or being an asymptomatic transmitter and bringing it home to my family members. And that's what made me make the decision. Nearly, it was the last day of school before I handed in my resignation. It was extremely tough.
I was going to say, kindergarten teachers, oh my gosh, they're so loving and so emotionally invested in what they do and their students. The decision to walk away for all the reasons you just laid out so clearly. Tell me about the toll emotionally and how you've been feeling about it.
It's been very hard. I live behind the school that I attended as a child and where my adult grown children attended. And yesterday, when I saw my public Toronto school opening its doors for the first time for face-to-face learning, and watching those youngest learners going into the school and standing outside with their parents, there was no doubt in my mind as I looked out my second floor window, the fear, anxiousness, and worry that parents had. It was very emotional.
But for you, not going back to what you've done for 32 years, how tough was that?
Yes, that has been extremely difficult because it's been my calling, my vocation. I've been an advocate for early childhood education since I began my career. And what was most gut-wrenching was the fact that I wouldn't see those smiling faces, receive those high fives, receive those hugs, and be part of that laughter and playfulness and that freedom that children are supposed to be experiencing right now.
Maija, you're not the only teacher to leave the profession early because of concerns about COVID-19. Are you talking with any colleagues in similar circumstances? Do you have a shared understanding that, of why you've been forced to make what is a pretty drastic decision?
Yes. I have kept in touch with colleagues who also were part of my cohort and graduating year. And there is a large number of us that made the decision to retire, despite the fact that we loved our jobs, that our home away from home was our classroom, and that we poured our hearts and souls into those students each and every day. And it strictly came down to the fact that I felt that the government was not maximizing safety, but maximizing savings. And that's clearly coming out right now. It's not about the 3 R's, it's about the 3 C's: cleaning, covering up with the mask, and most importantly, cohorts. Small class cohorts are going to help reduce community transmission. We are all like dominoes being stacked on top of each other in the school system. If one domino block, those dots represent a cohort, get COVID, the whole domino tower collapses.
So I was going to ask you how you think this is going to go based on what you're seeing so far and the knowledge that you have about the mechanisms in place. It sounds like you think the whole thing is pretty tenuous.
Yes, there's a vulnerable tapestry right now that's running in the public school system, and I still find it very disconcerting when I go into, for example, a grocery store. I see screeners, I see an individual constantly spraying down the handles of shopping carts. I see numbers being limited and reduced into the store aisles themselves, and yet in classrooms right now, there are classes that are exceeding over 30. And in the spring, we were promised cohorts of 15. And that makes a difference. That makes a difference. And we need to be speaking up about this, which is why, despite retiring, I feel I needed a voice and I needed to share my concerns and what led me to quit teaching early.
Which you have done with us this morning. How important was teaching in your life, Maija?
I really was inspired at an early age to become a teacher, and it was part of, I think, a lifelong vocation and calling. I have passed on the love of learning to many of my students, and also I've passed on that nonsensical playfulness that children need to be feeling right now. And I'm not sensing that. I'm sensing worry amongst school communities and amongst parents, and that's clearly been shown as parents continue to pull their children out and are choosing the remote learning option. And the most important thing is that children need to be free again. They need to be able to experience that freedom of childhood. And the only way we're going to do that is to get this pandemic under control. They already have been out of school for 6 months. Globally, in many cases, this is also an issue that is impacting the mental health of children. And before the 3 R's, we need to be looking at the mental health of children as they're entering the schools again, or for that matter, they're isolated at home doing remote learning.
You raised so many things, Maija. Thank you for telling us that, sharing your story, raising the issues, and we wish you the very best in whatever comes next in your life. The path changed unexpectedly and prematurely for you. Maija Kimes from Toronto this morning.